Hello, everybody. So I'd like to talk about mixed reality technologies and the implication those technologies have for epistemic and environmental justice. By mixed reality, I just mean the integration of virtual or digital elements with physical elements into the world around us, into our landscape or our environment. At one extreme, that can be augmented reality, where you are mostly just looking at the world as you see it, but there's some visual digital element added to it, maybe like a monitor floating, in the upper corner of your field of vision. At the other extreme, you're mostly looking at a digital virtual sort of world or picture, but there's a camera, so it can bring in one or two physical elements, or as in this case, it can make sure you're lined up properly for a map or a schematic with the physical world, just to make it more helpful. And then within that spectrum, there's a lot of things where differing amounts of virtual and physical elements interact to a certain amount, and you can manipulate them more or less, within this sort of broad spectrum. So there's lots of things are covered here. I'm part of a larger project of people looking at digital worlds of different kinds. My approach is to think about these new mixed environments using the tools of environmental philosophy, especially environmental justice. And today, my smaller part of that larger project is thinking about the ways that mixed reality technology lets us offload some epistemic burdens onto the environment and some justice implications from that for epistemic justice, environmental justice. By offloading epistemic burdens, that's the thing we do all the time with the physical world, right? So one way we do it is manipulating tokens to help us solve a problem, because maybe there's more steps in that than we can hold easily in our head, or the logical sort of steps are a little tricky for us. The obvious example of this is doing math on a piece of paper, but also manipulating any tokens, making any kind of model to help us solve a problem. Also aides de memoire, so when, rather than have the epistemic burden of remembering everything and keeping it in our head or checking back on it, cycling through it, is there anything else I was going to do today, you can place that memory in the physical world, right? So that way you'll just see it and be reminded of it again, and you don't have to keep it going and have that burden all day long, right? That can be everything from a planner to post-it notes, whatever. Also included is set and setting. So you might find certain environments conducive to thoughts, or you might find certain environments conducive to certain thoughts. So, maybe you have certain kinds of thoughts in the shower. There's a whole subreddit devoted to shower thoughts. Or maybe you walk into the kitchen and forget why you were there, but when you go back into the living room, you remember, oh, right, I remember now. So we have certain places that are associated, walks in the woods to help us think, those solitary philosophical journeys, that kind of thing. Now, how can that be augmented or added to by mixed reality technology? Well, one really obvious way is that all of our aides de memoire, all of our tokens for reasoning and thinking and remembering and just having epistemic stuff happen, can come with us, perfectly portable, because it's virtual. So if you think of everything in your office that helps you work, books, post-it notes, hopefully not your password written on your monitor, art, everything there that makes that a good place for you to work, you've slowly created. The promise with mixed reality is that you can fold it all up and take it with you and overlay it on a park or in your kitchen or anywhere you want it to be, and be there for those kinds of thoughts. Another nice element of it being virtual is that can be fully private, so only you can see those aids that you've brought with you, those tokens, but you can also share them with anyone else that you want. You can share them with everyone around you or one other person and no one else can see it, and you guys can interact with it together to think together to solve some kind of problem. Or you can fold it up and just have it be something you can see. Another sort of nice benefit of mixed reality technology is you can bring in parts of the environment to your reasoning that would have been harder to do otherwise. I can place a post-it note on the wall or write on a whiteboard, but it'd be pretty hard to do that to a skyscraper. But with mixed reality technology, it's very easy to bring that skyscraper into my thought process, to use it as a token, to use it as a stimulus to memory, whatever. Another nice element is that other people can do that in advance. So like in this picture here, somebody else can think that this building, it would be nice if it was tagged with certain information, that other people might find that useful for the problems that they're thinking through, for the knowledge that they're trying to form, and can have that automatically be there when anyone else uses the technology. It'll just present itself to them. So that all sounds really neat. It might seem a little, you might already be suspecting that there's some issues that I'm making it sound nicer than it is. I agree, but what I'm focusing on today is just justice implications of that neat technology. So the most obvious one is distributive justice. If we assume that it's mostly good or all good, these technologies, then there's going to be distributive issues, right? So at first, when the technology is rare and expensive, people who are doing well will be able to afford it, and they can use that to think better. They can remember more, they can solve more problems, they can be more efficient at work, they can have their office with them so they're always working. I realize that's starting to sound dystopian, but for now we're assuming that that's mostly good. And so then they'll do better and get promotions at jobs and make even more money. So the people who are doing well will start to do even more well. As it becomes a ubiquitous technology and we start to assume as a culture that people have it, think about the way our culture now assumes that people have access to phones, to internet, to computers, even though that's not actually the case, then those assumptions will start to marginalize people who are already marginalized. So you can imagine places for public thinking like museums, libraries, schools, making virtual installations rather than physical ones, because virtual ones are cheaper, probably. They certainly don't like weather. They can be updated very easily, all sorts of advantages. They can't be vandalized, things like that. But then if you don't have the technology, you won't be able to interact with those at all and benefit from them. So at first, those who are doing well do even better. Later, those who are marginalized become even more marginalized. That's a pretty common story for people who are familiar with technological treadmills. Another justice implication is commodification. And there's also sort of two flavors of this, I think. One is us being advertised to, so the environment being commodified to advertise to us. So we're using this mixed reality in order to solve problems. Maybe where do I want to eat, or where hotel do I want to stay at? I'm going to walk around and look and see what I see, and that'll help me solve that problem. The environment around us can have digital elements that advertise to us, that environment now has more things that give us information that people are paying to give us. I realize that's already the case with signs, billboards, things like that. But mixed reality allows that to be more omnipresent because it can block things that you wouldn't be able to block with a billboard, and more salient. It can really just literally jump out at you into your field of vision with bright flashing lights and all sorts of things. Another form of commodification, though, that I think is more interesting is that we can be commodified. We're pretty used to that idea from social media, where all of our social interactions, the things we say to each other, are a product that can be sold to political actors or commercial actors, any number of people. But how much more would those people like to have access to the things that you're trying to remember, to the problems you're trying to solve, to the things you're worried about, to the thoughts that you're having, to the sort of epistemic access to what's going on inside here, either at a broad statistical level, what are lots of people trying to remember, thinking about, or drilling down for a particular person. So we can be commodified as we use these tools for thinking. A third one that's maybe even a little bit less obvious, I think, is alienation and limitation. So by this I mean we interact with the world around us and over time give it meaning. Right? It becomes a world of meaning for us. So this tree might come to symbolize something for me. It might remind me of something every time I see it. It might inspire some new thought in me because of its shape or something. I might have some new thought about the world. But all that sort of happens organically over time as I create a world of meaning. With mixed reality, overlaid on top of that is much more salient, much more vivid, what engineers and designers thought I would probably want to have access to in this environment. So their ideas of how I would use this environment for thinking, their ideas of what I would want to be remembered by, or reminded by rather, their ideas for significances are in bright flashing digital lights overlaid on top of the world and suggest themselves first to me. So that sort of building of my own world of meaning is now something that everyone sees when they see that, and is designed by somebody else who, as I said, might not have our best interest at heart, but also might just, think differently than me. So that's about all the time I have. I'd like to talk to you about this more, but in conclusion, they're under-examined justice issues, but especially under-examined are the possible injustices and harms for people who are lucky enough to have this technology. Is this inherent to the technology? In the longer version of this paper, or in Q&A, I'd love to talk to you. My unhelpful answer is partly we can mitigate it with design choices, but some of it is still built in. As I said, this is part of a larger project, so if you're interested, get in contact. You can email me. Also, the website for our project I and some colleagues are doing is digitalworldsworkshop.wordpress.com. And if you're really thinking about virtual worlds or digital worlds in general, so including social media, video games, whatever, Dr. Michael Butler and I are editing a forthcoming special issue of TechNay about digital worlds, so be sure to get in contact with me about that. Thank you.